I walked into what I thought was my 30th birthday party. Instead, I walked into my own public execution. 75 relatives stared at me like I was a criminal. No smiles, no balloons, just cold, dead silence. My father stood at the head of the table holding a microphone and a red folder. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Then he said the words that shattered my entire existence. "You're not our daughter. This DNA test proves it. And you owe us $500,000. My mother ripped my car keys out of my hand before I could even process what was happening. My sister pointed her phone at my face, live streaming my humiliation to thousands of people. She whispered, "This is going to go viral." I stood there surrounded by everyone I'd ever called family. Not one person defended me. Not one person asked if I was okay. They just watched. Like I was a show. Like my pain was entertainment. But then something shifted. A man stepped out from the shadows in the corner of the room. Expensive suit. Silver hair. Eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my heart stop. My father's face went white. My mother grabbed his arm and hissed, "Who let him in?" The stranger looked at me, and for the first time that night, I saw something that looked like hope. "Not yet, Gerald," he said calmly. "Let her ask her questions first." I didn't know who he was, but he knew exactly who I was, and everything was about to change. My name is Summer Patterson, or at least, that's the name I've carried for 30 years. I'm an ICU nurse. I work 12-hour shifts saving lives while most people are asleep. I've held the hands of dying strangers. I've performed CPR until my arms gave out. I've sacrificed holidays, weekends, and my own health to care for others. And for 7 years, I sent $500 every single month to my parents. That's $42,000. I never asked for it back. I never expected gratitude. That's just what you do for family, right? Wrong. Because the family I gave everything to just told me I was never theirs. And now, they wanted more. Let me take you back 3 weeks. That's when my sister Brianna called with what she said was exciting news. She told me our parents were throwing me a surprise birthday party, the first party they'd ever thrown for me in my entire life. I should have known something was wrong. My parents had never celebrated me. Not when I turned 18. Not when I graduated nursing school at the top of my class. Not even when I worked a double shift on my 21st birthday and came home to cold meatloaf. But Brianna's 21st birthday? That was a $15,000 extravaganza, 100 guests, a 5-tier cake. My father gave a speech about how proud he was of his little princess. I got meatloaf and a pat on the shoulder. Still, when Brianna told me about the party, I let myself believe. Maybe turning 30 was different. Maybe they finally saw me. Maybe after 3 decades of trying to earn their love, I'd finally succeeded. So I bought a new dress. Navy blue. Elegant. Professional. I did my makeup carefully. I even bought them a gift. A leather-bound photo album filled with family pictures I'd spent weeks organizing. Pathetic, right? Bringing a gift to your own birthday party. But that was me. Always giving. Always hoping that if I just gave enough, tried hard enough, loved hard enough, they'd finally love me back. The night of the party, I stood outside the Grand Oak restaurant and stared at the glow of chandeliers through the windows. I could see shadows of people moving inside. Dozens of them. My parents had reserved the entire private dining room. I rehearsed my surprised face in the rearview mirror. Wide eyes. Hand over heart. Oh my goodness, you shouldn't have. I wanted to give them the reaction they wanted. I wanted this night to be perfect. I walked through the entrance. The hostess smiled and directed me to the back. The Patterson party, right through those doors. I took a breath, smoothed my dress, pushed open the doors. Silence. No balloons, no streamers, no chorus of surprise, just 75 faces turning toward me in perfect unison. and not one of them was smiling. My heart started to race. Something was wrong. Horribly wrong. The room was set up like a courtroom. A long table at the center. My parents standing behind it like judges. And on that table, a single red folder. My father held a microphone. His voice echoed through the speakers, cold and sharp. "Summer, sit down, we need to talk." My legs moved on autopilot. I lowered myself into a chair that had been positioned facing the entire room, facing them, like a defendant. That's when I saw her. A woman in the corner with a professional camera. Not a party photographer. A videographer. They were recording this. Whatever this was, they wanted proof. My father opened the red folder, and my entire world was about to collapse. My father's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Summer, do you know why we invited 75 people here tonight?" I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. "My birthday?" The word sounded so small, so stupid. "No." He shook his head slowly, deliberately. "To serve as witnesses." Witnesses. The word hung in the air like poison. Witnesses to what? My voice cracked. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a document from the red folder and held it up for everyone to see. His hand was perfectly steady, like he'd practiced this moment. "This is a DNA test," he said. "Your mother and I submitted samples 3 months ago. The results came back conclusive." Time stopped. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. "You are not our biological daughter." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, chairs scraping. Someone in the back said, "I knew it. I always knew something was off about her." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My hands gripped the armrests of the chair so tightly my knuckles turned white. "What?" I barely recognized my own voice. "That's impossible. You're not ours, Summer." My mother stepped forward, her face twisted into something I'd never seen before. Pure disgust. "You never were. We took you in. We raised you. We gave you everything. And how did you repay us?" My father's voice rose, sharp and accusing. "By slandering us to your friends, by acting like we were never good enough for you, by complaining that Brianna got everything and you got nothing." My mind was spinning. Yes, I'd vented to friends. Everyone does. But I never slandered them. I just told the truth. We have witnesses." My father gestured to the crowd like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "People who've heard you complain. People who know what kind of person you really are." I looked around desperately. My Uncle Robert, Aunt Dorothy, cousins I'd grown up with. People who'd told me they loved me. People I'd trusted. Not one of them met my eyes. My father slid another paper from the folder. A spreadsheet. Rows and rows of numbers. "This," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction, "is an itemized list of everything we spent raising you. Food, clothing, education, housing." He paused. Let the silence build. Then delivered the final blow. $500,000. The number echoed through the room like a gunshot. "And we want it back." Before I could respond, my mother lunged. Her fingers closed around my wrist like a vice, prying my car keys from my hand before I even realized what was happening. "This car." She held up the keys like a trophy. "You bought it with money from a job you only got because of your father's connections. Technically, it belongs to us." "I paid for that car myself." My voice was shaking. "Every payment. Every cent. I have the loan documents." "Your salary comes from the hospital where Gerald was a board member." My mother smiled, but it was cold. Empty. "Without him, you'd be nothing. You owe us everything you have." I looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone, who would stand up for me. No one moved. Uncle Robert actually nodded. "She's got a point, Summer. Your father opened a lot of doors for you." Then I heard it. a voice I knew too well. "Smile for the camera, sis." Brianna appeared at my side, her phone inches from my face. The red recording light blinked. She was live streaming this, and I was trapped. "This is amazing content," Brianna whispered, her eyes glued to her phone screen. "My followers are going to lose their minds." I stared at the screen. Thousands of viewers, comments scrolling faster than I could read. "OMG, this is insane. That poor girl. The parents are psycho. Fake, has to be fake." But it wasn't fake. This was my life being ripped apart in real time, broadcast to strangers, turned into entertainment. "Brianna, stop." My voice came out weak, broken. "Shh. Keep talking. The comments are going crazy." She angled the phone closer to my face, capturing every tear, every moment of humiliation. I'd spent my whole life being invisible to my family. Now, in my worst moment, I was finally being seen, just not the way I'd ever imagined. My father pulled out another document, a contract. "Summer, I need you to sign this, tonight, in front of everyone." He slid it across the table. I could see the header in bold letters, promissory note. "This legally obligates you to repay $500,000 over 10 years, monthly payments of $4,200. If you miss a single payment, we take legal action." My hands were shaking. "I can't afford that. I'm a nurse, not a millionaire. That's more than half my salary." "Then you'll need to pick up extra shifts?" My mother's voice was ice. "Or find a second job. That's not our problem." "You can't do this." I looked around the room, desperate. "This is insane. You can't charge someone for raising them. That's not how family works." "You're not family." My father's words hit like a physical blow. "The DNA test proves it. You're not ours. You never were." "Then who am I?" The question burst out of me, raw and desperate. "If I'm not your daughter, then whose daughter am I? Where did I come from?" My mother's face flickered, just for a second. Something that looked almost like guilt. "That's not relevant," she said quickly. "Not relevant." My voice rose. "You just told me my entire life is a lie, and you think it's not relevant?" "What's relevant?" My father interrupted, his tone sharp. "Is that you sign this document. Now." I stared at the contract, at the signatures waiting at the bottom, at the 75 witnesses watching me like I was a circus act. This wasn't about money. This was about control, about humiliation, about making me pay for something I didn't even understand. And that's when I saw him again, the man in the corner, the one in the expensive gray suit. He was still watching me, but now he was moving, walking slowly through the crowd. People parted for him without even thinking about it, like he carried authority in the way he breathed. My father's face went pale. "You need to leave. Now." The stranger ignored him. He walked straight toward me, his eyes never leaving mine. "Summer," he said quietly. His voice was deep, steady, kind. "Do you know who I am?" I shook my head, my throat too tight to speak. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. Old, faded, creased like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. He handed it to me. It was a picture of a young woman. She looked about my age. Dark hair, bright eyes, a smile that lit up the entire frame, and she looked exactly like me. Her name was Elena, the stranger said softly. She was my daughter. My hands started to shake. "Was?" "She died 30 years ago." His voice cracked. 3 days after giving birth. The room went completely silent. "Giving birth to you." The photograph trembled in my hands. I couldn't stop staring at her, at Elena, at the woman who looked like she could be my twin. "Who are you?" I whispered. "My name is Richard Donovan." He said it like it should mean something. And judging by the reaction in the room, it did. My father's face had gone from pale to ashen. My mother looked like she was going to be sick. "Richard Donovan," someone in the crowd murmured. The Richard Donovan? I had no idea who that was. But the fear in my parents' eyes told me everything I needed to know. Richard kept his eyes on me. Elena was my only child. She got pregnant when she was 19. The father disappeared the moment he found out. She was scared. Alone. But she was determined to keep you. My throat tightened. What happened to her? Complications during delivery. She hemorrhaged. The doctors couldn't stop it. His voice broke. She held you for 2 hours. Then she was gone. Tears blurred my vision. I'd spent 30 years wondering why I never felt like I belonged. Now I knew. Because I'd been born into loss. I was destroyed. Richard continued. I'd just lost my daughter and gained a granddaughter in the same breath. I was in no condition to raise a baby, so I made arrangements. He turned to my father. His expression hardened. I paid Gerald and Margaret Patterson $200,000 to adopt you, to give you a good life, to love you like their own. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. My mother's face flushed red. That's not... I have the documents, Richard interrupted calmly. The woman beside him, his assistant, opened the manila folder and pulled out a stack of papers. Bank transfers, adoption agreements, all signed and notarized 30 years ago. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. You paid them to take me? I paid them to love you. Richard's eyes glistened. I was grieving. Broken. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you'd have a better life with a family. But you didn't disappear, I said slowly, the pieces clicking into place. You've been watching. He nodded. From a distance. I had someone check on you every few years, make sure you were safe. Happy. His jaw tightened. 3 months ago, I found out they were planning this. My head snapped toward my father. You knew he was alive? My father said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. They told me you were dead, I said, my voice rising. They said my biological parents were both dead. They lied. Richard's voice was hard now. Because they knew if you ever found me, you'd learn the truth. That they took $200,000 to raise you and spent it on themselves. That they treated you like a burden while spoiling their biological daughter. That they never intended to love you at all. I looked at my parents, at the people who'd raised me, who'd made me feel small and invisible my entire life. Is that true? My voice shook. Did you take his money and just pocket it? My mother opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. We used it for the family, she finally said, defensive. For the household. For Brianna's future. For Brianna. I laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. Of course. Everything was always for Brianna. My father stepped forward, his face twisted in anger. You have no right to judge us. We fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. With his money, I shot back. Money that was meant for me. Richard's assistant stepped forward and handed me another document. This, she said quietly, is your original birth certificate. Your real name is Summer Elena Donovan. I stared at the paper. For the first time in my life, I knew who I really was. And I was done being their victim. I looked down at the birth certificate in my hands. My real name, Summer Elena Donovan. Not Patterson. Never Patterson. I'd spent 30 years trying to earn the love of people who were never supposed to be my family. People who took money meant for my future and used it to build someone else's life. You lied to me. My voice was steady now. Stronger. About everything. My mother crossed her arms defensively. We gave you a home. We didn't have to do that. You were paid $200,000 to do that. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. You were paid to love me, and you couldn't even do that. My father's face flushed red. Watch your tone. Or what? I stepped toward him. You'll humiliate me in front of 75 people? Oh, wait. You already did that. Brianna lowered her phone slightly, her eyes wide. For the first time that night, she looked uncertain. I turned to Richard. Why didn't you come for me sooner? Why did you wait 30 years? Pain flashed across his face. Because I was a coward. I thought I was too broken to be a father. I thought you'd be better off without me. He took a breath. But 3 months ago, I found out what they were planning. The fake DNA test, the public humiliation, the demand for repayment. I couldn't let them destroy you. Fake DNA test? I turned slowly toward my parents. What is he talking about? My father's jaw tightened. The test is real. No, it's not. Richard's assistant stepped forward, holding up another document. We had it independently analyzed. The sample labeled as Margaret Patterson's DNA doesn't match any biological markers from Summer. Because it's not Margaret's DNA. It's someone else's. The room went dead silent. You faked it, I said slowly, the realization hitting me like a freight train. You faked the DNA test to make this story believable, to justify humiliating me, to justify taking everything from me. My mother's face crumbled. Summer, it's not… Don't. I held up a hand. Don't say my name like you have any right to it. I looked around the room at all 75 witnesses, at the people who'd sat silently while my parents tore me apart. You all watched, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. You sat here and watched them destroy me, and not one of you said a word. Aunt Dorothy looked down at her hands. Uncle Robert shifted uncomfortably. No one met my eyes. That's what I thought. I turned back to my parents. You wanted witnesses? Fine. Let them witness this. I picked up the promissory note they'd tried to force me to sign, the one demanding $500,000, and I ripped it in half. My father lurched forward. You can't. I can. I tore it again. And again. Let the pieces flutter to the floor like confetti. You have no legal right to demand anything from me. Richard paid you to raise me. That money is long gone, and I owe you nothing. My mother's voice turned shrill. We'll sue you. We'll take everything you have. With what evidence? Richard's assistant stepped forward, calm and professional. We have documentation of the original adoption payment, proof that you fabricated the DNA test, and thanks to your daughter's live stream, we have video evidence of attempted coercion and fraud. Brianna's face went white. Her phone was still in her hand, the red recording light still blinking. She'd documented her own parents' crime. The car keys, I said, holding out my hand to my mother. Give them back, now. For a long moment she just stared at me. Then, slowly, she dropped the keys into my palm. I closed my fingers around them. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. I looked at Richard. At the man who was, genetically, my grandfather. A stranger who'd done more to protect me in one night than my so-called parents had done in 30 years. Why now? I asked. Why reveal all of this tonight? Because I was tired of watching them hurt you. His voice was firm. And because you deserve to know the truth. All of it. There's more? He nodded. The $200,000 I gave them was supposed to be held in a trust fund, released to you when you turned 18. They were only supposed to use the interest for your care. My stomach dropped. Let me guess, they spent it all. Every cent. His assistant pulled out another document, bank statements, highlighted transactions. Within 5 years, the entire amount was gone. Vacations, a new car for Margaret, Brianna's private school tuition? Your parents lived well. You got nothing. I turned to face my father. You stole from me, from a child. He said nothing. His face was stone. And when the money ran out, Richard continued, they couldn't get rid of you. So they did the next best thing. They made sure you knew you were less than. They made sure you felt like you had to earn every scrap of affection. They broke you down so thoroughly that you'd never question why you were treated differently. Every memory clicked into place. Every time I was overlooked. Every time Brianna got everything and I got nothing. Every time I worked myself to exhaustion trying to prove I was worthy of love, it was never about me. It was about control. You were supposed to be grateful, my mother said suddenly, her voice bitter. We could have put you in foster care. We could have walked away. You were paid a fortune not to walk away, I shot back. And you still treated me like garbage. Brianna finally spoke, her voice small. I didn't know. I swear, Summer, I didn't know any of this. I looked at my sister, at the girl who'd had everything handed to her while I fought for scraps. She looked scared, young, like the illusion of her perfect family was finally cracking. Maybe you didn't know about the money, I said quietly. But you knew I was treated differently. You knew. And you enjoyed it. She flinched. I turned to Richard. What happens now? That depends on you. He met my eyes. I'm not here to force anything. I know I'm a stranger. I know I can't undo 30 years of pain. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your life. I'd like to get to know my granddaughter. Something in my chest cracked open. Not broken. Released. I'd like that, I whispered. He smiled. A real smile. The kind I'd been searching for my whole life. There's one more thing. His assistant handed me a final document. Your mother, Elena, left a letter. She wrote it in the hospital, right before she died. She wanted you to have it when you were old enough to understand. I took the envelope with shaking hands. My name was written on the front in delicate, slanted handwriting. To my daughter, Summer Elena. She named me, I breathed. She loved you, Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. In the 2 hours she had with you, she loved you more than they ever did. I clutched the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, tears of relief. Of finally being seen. I turned one last time to my parents, to Gerald and Margaret Patterson, the people who'd raised me but never loved me. I'm done, I said simply. I'm done trying to earn something you were never going to give. I'm done making myself small to fit into your version of family. I started walking toward the door. Richard fell into step beside me. Behind us, my father called out, desperation creeping into his voice. Summer, wait. We can talk about this. I didn't stop. Didn't look back. I just kept walking. Night air hit my face like freedom. I stood outside the Grand Oak restaurant, clutching my mother's letter, trying to process everything that had just happened. Richard stood beside me, quiet, giving me space. I need to read this, I said, holding up the envelope. Take your time. He nodded toward a bench near the parking lot. I'll be right here. I sat down under a streetlight and carefully opened the envelope. The paper inside was yellowed with age, the ink slightly faded. But the words were clear. My dearest Summer Elena, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there to tell you these things myself. I'm writing this from a hospital bed, holding you in my arms, knowing I don't have much time left. You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You have my eyes and your father's stubborn chin. You're only 2 hours old, and already I can see your strength. I wish I could stay. I wish I could watch you grow up, see you graduate, hold your hand through heartbreaks, celebrate your victories. I wish I could be there for all of it, but I can't. And that breaks my heart more than you'll ever know. My father is a good man, but he's drowning in grief. He thinks he can't raise you alone. He's making arrangements for you to be adopted by a family who will love you the way you deserve. Summer, please know this. You were wanted. You were loved. In the short time I had with you, I loved you with everything I had. Be brave. Be kind. Be strong. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're less than you are. You are my daughter. You are everything. All my love, forever. Elena. By the time I finished reading, I was sobbing. Not quiet tears, deep, body-shaking sobs, the kind that come from 30 years of pain finally being acknowledged. Richard sat down beside me and put a hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything. He just stayed. When I finally caught my breath, I looked at him. She wanted me. She adored you. His eyes were wet. I was there when she wrote that letter. She could barely hold the pen, but she insisted. She said you needed to know you were loved. They made me feel like I was a burden, I whispered. Like I was something they had to tolerate. That was never true. Richard's voice was firm. You were never a burden. You were a gift. And they threw you away. I wiped my eyes. I sent them $42,000 over 7 years. I worked extra shifts to help them. I bought Brianna birthday presents I couldn't afford. I did everything I could to make them love me. You can't buy love from people who are incapable of giving it, Richard said gently. That's not a reflection of you. That's a reflection of them. For the first time in my life, I believed it. I looked back at the restaurant. Through the windows, I could see my parents still standing at the table. My father was yelling. My mother was crying. Brianna was sitting in a chair, staring at her phone. The 75 witnesses were filing out, whispering to each other, avoiding eye contact with my parents. What happens to them now? I asked. That depends on what you want to do, Richard said. We have evidence of fraud, coercion, and misappropriation of funds. If you want to press charges, we can. I thought about it. About revenge. About making them suffer the way they'd made me suffer. But then I thought about my mother's letter, about her telling me to be kind, to be strong. I don't want to press charges, I said finally. I just want to move on. Richard nodded. That's fair. But there's something else you should know. I looked at him. What? Your promotion? The charge nurse position you've been working toward? My heart sank. My father was supposed to write me a recommendation letter. You don't need his letter. Richard smiled. I still have connections at that hospital, and I'd be honored to recommend my granddaughter. 3 weeks later, I sat in the hospital administrator's office wearing my best suit. The same navy dress I'd worn to what was supposed to be my birthday party. But this time, it meant something different. This time, I was here, on my own merit. Ms. Donovan, the administrator said, looking up from my file. I have to say, your application is impressive. 7 years of exemplary service, glowing reviews from patients and colleagues, and a recommendation letter from Richard Donovan himself. I smiled. He's my grandfather. So I understand. She smiled back. The position is yours if you want it. I want it. The words came out strong, certain. Thank you. Walking out of that office with the promotion I'd worked 7 years for felt like vindication. Not because I'd proven something to my parents, because I'd proven something to myself. I didn't need them. I never did. That evening, I met Richard at a small cafe downtown. He'd been giving me space to process everything, but we'd started having weekly dinners, getting to know each other, building something new. Congratulations on the promotion, he said, raising his coffee cup. Elena would be so proud. Thank you. I clinked my cup against his. For everything. For the letter. For showing up. For giving me the truth. I should have done it sooner. Regret flickered across his face. I wasted 30 years being afraid. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. I wanted to give you this. It belonged to your mother. I opened it carefully. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant, a tiny engraved star. She wore it every day, Richard said quietly. She wanted you to have it. I lifted the necklace out of the box, the chain catching the light. It's beautiful. Let me. Richard stood and helped me fasten it around my neck. When I looked down, the star rested right over my heart. For the first time in my life, I felt complete. Over the next few months, things shifted. I moved out of my cramped apartment and into a better place. Richard helped with the down payment, but I insisted on paying him back. He argued. I won. I stopped sending money to my parents, blocked their numbers, unfriended them on social media. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it out of self-preservation. Brianna reached out once, a long text message full of apologies and excuses. She claimed she didn't know how bad things were. She said she wanted to make things right. I didn't respond. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. I did hear through a mutual cousin that my parents were struggling financially. Apparently, without my monthly $500 and without access to my salary, they were barely scraping by. My father had tried to take out loans using my name, but Richard's legal team shut that down fast. They'd finally run out of people to exploit. I didn't feel sorry for them. I felt free. The promotion came with new responsibilities. A team to manage. Harder shifts. More pressure. But I loved it. For the first time, I was building a life that was entirely mine. Richard and I had dinner every Sunday. Sometimes we talked about Elena. Sometimes we talked about my job. Sometimes we just sat in comfortable silence. He told me stories about my mother, about how she loved painting, how she was terrible at math but brilliant at writing, how she had a laugh that could light up a room. I started to see pieces of her in myself. The way I doodled on napkins, the way I cried at sad movies, the way I loved fiercely, even when it hurt. She'd given me more than life. She'd given me strength. One Sunday, Richard handed me another envelope. This is the deed to a property Elena inherited from her grandmother. It's a small house upstate. I've been maintaining it, but it's yours if you want it. I stared at the document. My mother's house. I want it, I whispered. 6 months after that disastrous birthday party, I stood in front of a small cottage 2 hours outside the city. The house Elena had left me. It was perfect. Cream-colored siding, a wraparound porch, a garden that had been carefully maintained. Richard had been coming here for years, keeping it ready, waiting. She loved this place, he said, standing beside me. She used to spend summers here as a kid. She always said she'd raise her family here one day. I felt tears prick my eyes. She never got the chance. No, Richard agreed. But you can. I walked through the front door and it felt like coming home. Hardwood floors, large windows, a fireplace in the living room, photographs of Elena on the walls, smiling, young, full of life. I spent the weekend exploring, opening closets, reading old journals Elena had left behind, learning about the woman who'd given me life. In one journal entry, dated 2 weeks before I was born, she wrote, "I'm scared. Terrified, actually. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't know if I'm strong enough. But I look at the ultrasound picture on my nightstand and I feel something I've never felt before. Purpose, love, hope. This baby is going to change my life. I can feel it. I'm going to be the best mother I can be. I'm going to love her with everything I have. I'm going to make sure she knows she matters." I closed the journal and held it to my chest. She'd tried. She'd loved me, She just didn't get enough time. But I had time. I had the rest of my life to honor her memory, to be the person she'd hoped I'd become. I decided to keep the cottage. I'd use it on weekends, a place to rest, to think, to heal. Back in the city, things continued to improve. My team at the hospital respected me. Patients remembered my name. Colleagues invited me to lunch. I started making real friends, not people I had to prove myself to. Just people who liked me for who I was. I even started dating. Nothing serious yet. But it felt good to be seen, to be wanted, to be chosen. One evening, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Summer? It was my father's voice, strained, tired. What do you want? I kept my tone neutral. I wanted to apologize. He sighed. For everything. We were wrong. I was wrong. I waited. Said nothing. We're struggling, he continued. Financially. We thought maybe you could help. Just until we get back on our feet. There it was. The real reason for the call. No, I said simply. Summer, please. We're family. No, Gerald, we're not. I used his first name deliberately. Family doesn't fake DNA tests. Family doesn't humiliate each other. Family doesn't steal. We made mistakes. You made choices, I interrupted. And now you're living with the consequences. Just like I had to. Summer, don't call this number again. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From power. From finally standing up for myself. I looked down at the star necklace hanging around my neck, the one Elena had worn every day. I hope I'm making you proud, I whispered. That night, I went to dinner with Richard. I told him about the call. He listened quietly, then said, How do you feel? Free, I said, and I meant it. Good. He smiled. That's exactly how you should feel. We ordered dessert, talked about my plans for the cottage, laughed about a ridiculous patient story from my shift. It felt normal, easy, like family was supposed to feel. For 30 years, I'd been searching for belonging, trying to earn love from people who would never give it. But I didn't need to search anymore. I'd found my family. I'd found myself. And I was finally home. Looking back now, I realize that birthday party was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because it was easy, not because it didn't hurt, but because it forced me to see the truth, to stop chasing love from people who were never going to give it, to stop making myself small to fit into a family that never wanted me to grow. I found my real family. Richard and I are closer than ever. I visit Elena's cottage every weekend. I've started painting, just like she used to. I'm building a life that's mine, a life that honors the woman who loved me for 2 hours but gave me everything. My parents tried to break me. They tried to make me believe I was worthless, that I owed them everything. But they were wrong. I don't owe them anything. I never did. I'm Summer Elena Donovan. I'm an ICU charge nurse. I'm a granddaughter. I'm a survivor. And I'm finally free. If this story touched you, I'd love for you to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more powerful stories like this one. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. Your support means everything. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are never defined by the people who failed to see your worth.